Well, I'm not an editor, and one thing I said what I was going to do, if you listen to the podcast, I'm going to key the podcast audience in. Podcast audience, I'm keying you in. Okay, so, as I was saying, I'm not an editor. You're going to see me walk around my desk. You're just going to have to deal with that because, I don't know, I'm not an editor. So anyway, this episode is going to be episode 11-ish, I think, depending on whenever it drops or when I upload it or whatever I'm going to do with it. Because we're taking a little bit of a turn here. I'm going to have a couple of guests come on in the next, I don't know, month or so. And we've just opened a YouTube channel, and it's the exact same thing as our name, Mind Out Podcast. For those of you that want to check it out, I know that some people have maybe limited access to podcasts. So this is for you. You'll be able to get some of those podcasts on YouTube. There's a couple that you can't, and I just covered this on the podcast episode beginning section if you want to, if you can find it. There are a couple where I featured a song that's from a recording artist who is, there's a copyright on the music, so YouTube wouldn't allow that, and that's fine. And I'm not trying to make money off of somebody's music. The episode was dealt with death. I think it was episode 3 maybe, and I used a song from an artist. I don't even know if I guess I can say their name, so it's Amberlin. I'm not going to sing the song because this video may get booted too. But anyway, these are bumps in the road as I'm beginning in this thing. So, and that's all cool. This has been a pretty fun experience for me. I don't typically like to talk a lot. If you've listened to the podcast in the past, you'll know that I'm a psychotherapist. I'm a hypnotherapist. Sometimes it just depends on what the situation calls for. I do a lot of work with couples. I do sex addiction work, although there are some people that believe that sex addiction isn't real, and I'm not treating you, so it should be good. But anyway, I do a lot of different things. I also have an EDS degree, so I had to teach in university to get the degree. I don't currently teach in university, but I think that would be fun at some point. But for now, I run a psychiatric clinic, and it keeps me really busy. And I was doing some private practice counseling for a while. I've taken the summer off so I can do things like this, and I don't know, kind of stretch, like I think that we need to take time to, even though I like doing both of those jobs, even with things that we like to do where we have a lot of responsibilities, it can tend to wear on us still. So you have to be careful. You got to make sure you're taking enough time for yourself and your family to reinvigorate your life. Because if you're always working on deadlines, or you're always worried about management of schedules, meeting people at a certain time, and making sure you talk about the right stuff and listen the right amount, but interject equally, the right amount that you need to, given the situation. There's so many variables that can just, crowd you out. And when I say crowd you out, I mean like the person inside who really would rather be, I don't know, I want to say out mowing the grass. I mean, that doesn't sound like it was fun when I was a kid, but I think the older I get, the more I idealize people that can, go out and do things when they want. And I think that we need to do that too, as responsible citizens, or responsible adults, responsible family members. that we owe it to the rest of our family to make sure we get enough time to where we're not biting people's heads off, basically. No, to where we're who we're supposed to be. We're not just this shadow of who the man or who the woman is. That we can be fully present and engaged when it's time to have family time or it's time to wind down. A lot of friends of mine that are in clinical work or they're doctors, well, it's so easy to bring stuff home, you know. It's so easy to worry about, man, did I do this one thing right? Did I follow this or perform this procedure the way I needed to? And that's the kind of stuff I think that keeps us up at night, particularly those of us with a personality trait around conscientiousness. You know, I'll cover some of the big five here shortly, so we really need to take time for ourselves. And whatever company you work for, if it's large enough and they have an HR department, you've probably heard about self-care, and you've probably heard about burnout or work-life balance, that kind of thing. It's all true, but nobody ever tells you what the hell to do with it, you know? Like, I think that it's easy to say, like, you need to do self-care because XYZ, or you need a mental health day because we can tell you're getting stressed out, and you know that it's weighing on your other, you know, people that you're working with, so you really need to. But nobody, I think a lot of people don't know, and I think that that's why I wanted to do this podcast. And even though it's not going to be a long one, and I haven't, you know, dug into my books and my archives about, you know, this isn't going to be about mythology or psychoanalysis or anything, so pretty light, but it's fundamentally an easy thing to do, you know. One of my favorite, I don't want to say teachers because he wasn't a teacher, but he was a principal, definitely my favorite principal from high school. I still see him often because I'm married to the family that he's from, who's married to my wife's family. It's whatever, but anyway, occasionally I see him. And one thing he said to me last year, because I mentioned about I was going on vacation, that we were going to take a family vacation. He said recreation is really, the word is what it's about, that you recreate yourself, like you take the time to get away and you recreate that person. And I thought about that for a while, and I thought, man, that was really profound, you know. And I think that there's an element of truth to that there is a way that we go about getting away from our stressors, not to negate any responsibility that we may have, but that we really take the time to nurture ourselves and integrate ourselves, because I feel like a lot of times there's so many of us that have just so many irons in the fire. You know, we go to work or volunteer, whatever it is that you do. It's really easy to find yourself in 6 different places at the same time. You know, if you've seen the movie Glass, you'll know what I'm talking about, you know, so and I'm not talking about dissociative identity disorder, but there's a lot to that, you know, that you have parts of yourself that do different things, you know. Say, well, take me for example with the 2 different jobs, and then the school thing on the side, and then the family man and all that. That really brought to mind my correspondence with BTK there for a second, so I'm going to have to draw myself back, because it's about compartmentalization. He called it cubing, but anyway, we won't give him any more credence here. But we have to really focus on getting back to the basics whenever we are on our vacation. What are things you like to do? and I said I was going to get into the big five. I think a big part of understanding what it is that can help you relax, or there's so many people I've talked to clinically that when I bring up the example of what are some hobbies or things you like to do, they're like, I don't know, I haven't done it in so long. I could, I'm too busy making sure the kids all have enough clothes to wear, and the dinner's ready, and the dog's fed, and whatever else, that I'm a wife, or I'm a husband to my wife, or that people put their loved ones in front of their own needs so many times. And then honestly, a lot of the times we end up resenting our loved ones because we haven't taken the time for ourselves, and it's not their fault. It's us for not saying, no, I need this time, and being assertive with that. I need this time, really, give me 30 minutes, I need to, clear my head, or I'm going to go for a walk, or I'm going to take this Saturday evening and I'm going to go out in my kayak, not because I'm a lazy fart, but because I need to gather myself. I need to, put some of the irons out that are still going from the week at work. That it's okay to be able to be assertive and have that time to yourself, and that it's not something selfish. I feel like a lot of the times, because I've been on vacation recently, hence the shirt. If you're listening to this on the podcast, you can't fully appreciate this. You're going to have to come to the YouTube page. I don't know, it's all over, it's loud. I'm surprised you can hear me over it, actually. Anyway, when I'm on vacation, I feel like there's a part of me that almost feels like I'm picking up where I left off last year. I've been able to, sometimes it's a long drive into where you're going that, all that stuff is so far behind you at home that it's hard for it to scream out loud enough to find you where you're at, rather than if you went camping at your local campground or something. You're close enough to home to where maybe you're going to run into somebody that you work with, and that's not a good thing, because it's going to bring up stuff in your head that would probably be left unaddressed until you get back. But anyway, a lot of the times when I go on vacation, I feel like I'm picking up where I left off before. Oh man, there's Andy again. God, I haven't seen you forever. Yeah, it's been a year, and you look worse than you did the last time I saw you. So I think that some of that is being able to shake off those stressors, being able to go somewhere with at least a reduction in the anxiety because of, all those irons in the fire, or all those plates that you've been spinning for months and months. I think it's a time for you to be able to nurture that inner self again. Out of 52 weeks in the year, a week or two, it's really not enough. And I have heard that the United States has got one of the least amount of vacationers per year than other countries like Spain, or some South American countries that are, you've heard of siesta, people take that in the middle of the day, so that might be something to look into at some point. The 40-hour work week, where for most of us it's not 40 hours, it's more than 40 hours. You may not get paid for more than 40 hours, but by the time you're getting up in the morning and you're making your lunch and you're driving to work and then you're driving home, and you may or may not get a lunch break or any kind of break that day, social services sees a lot of, for those of you who don't work in the area, like no breaks and no lunches unless you absolutely put everything on hold and just force yourself to do it. And you have to sometimes, you really have to, you're not taken away from your employer by clearing your head for, taking a walk or whatever it is for 15 minutes or an hour or whatever. But you've really got to nurture your inner self. And I'm not sure who coined the phrase, the inner child, but it's true. we're still that person. A lot of us, and I could get into people that never really had a childhood because they were forced to grow up too early. I think sometimes that can turn in, a lot of the time, that can turn into a very high neuroticism. And that's one of the big five too, is neuroticism. So what do I do if I'm neurotic? I think first it would have to be, how do you define that, and what does that mean to you to be that way? As far as what symptoms do you have, how does it affect your life negatively enough to impact your job or your relationships or your finances? But I think people who are higher in neuroticism tend to need more time to redirect, more time to collect themselves, more time to invest in, one, getting healthier, you know. And for some people it may be seeing a therapist. For some people it may be, good Lord, being a marathon runner or something like that, to be able to take that time and relinquish some of that, whatever it is that's causing their neurosis or neuroses. And I think that, you know, for other people, like, so since I mentioned the big five, like openness to experience is another one. So if this is you, first off, I would suggest taking the Myers-Briggs. You can get free ones on even Facebook, but you can take basic ones online for no cost, or you can look them up and, well, that's not going to help. I was going to say you might be able to identify, but you actually need the questionnaire that's going to ask you specific questions between the dichotomy of like introvert versus extrovert. So you're really going to know, once you've taken that test, or once you've taken a basic one, kind of what range you land in. It may not be 100% accurate. You're not having it administered by a psychologist, but at least you'll get an idea of what might work for you. And this goes along with work experience too. There's many things in the big five categories that help you further understand who you are. I might even try to put a link on this on our Facebook and Twitter page. If I can find a decent one, I'll upload that, and then you can refer back to it and maybe take it after you finish watching this video or listening to the podcast. But to understand your personality type is really going to help you understand if you're one of those people who say, like, I don't have any hobbies and I'm too worried about dealing with everybody else's stuff, then this may help you get in the ballpark as to what types of things you can expect that might, you might gain some benefit from. It's not going to be 100%. It may be totally wrong for you. Sometimes it's a matter of simple things like, what did you enjoy when you were a kid? What were some things that you did when you were a child that you found pleasure in, or that you found yourself getting lost in, which might be like reading, or it might be, I don't know, one good thing I think for people with neuroses might be good, like fossil hunting, things that you can do alone if you need to, going on local hiking trails, really earthy type elemental stuff helps with neurosis. There's even studies out about the reduction in stress by doing things like planting flowers and getting your hands in the soil. Like, there's something about getting your hands in the earth that, for whatever reason, according to these studies, is that it can help, diminish stress and anxiety. Another thing, like if you're maybe find yourself depressed a lot, getting your heart pumping, like going for a walk. Some people like marathons. Personally, like, the only way I would do a marathon is if it was like it was in Rocky, where you've got the stake tied to your leg and a dog's chasing you. That's not my idea of a good time. Definitely healthy for you, for sure, and I should probably look into it. Well, I do have a bad knee, so I guess that's a good enough excuse, right?